Welcome to Da Vinci's Discourse, where the minds of today's most innovative entrepreneurs are unveiled and explored. And my name is Kyle Campbell, your guide on this journey into the depths of the entrepreneurial psyche. So sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into the minds of the greats. This is Da Vinci's Discourse. Right on, man. So David, it's good to have you here, man. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? What do you do and what do you love about what you do?
I'm a writer, and I've written three full-length books designed for hackers, The Heart to Start, Mind Management, Not Time Management. Written a number of short reads, How to Write a Book, Digital Zettelkasten. Uh, and I think what I love about what I do is that I have total control. I'm a self-published author. Well, my first book wasn't self-published, but I do everything. I do the writing, I do the editing with the help of my beta readers. I design my covers. I do the layout of my books. I do all my own marketing. I do my own bookkeeping, and I just love being able to learn new skills, do my own photography. Love learning new skills and being able to add that to whatever it is that I do, and being able to make the decisions myself.
Right on. Nothing wrong with that, man, for sure. Do you use AI at all? One of our publishing companies, what we do is we use AI to transcribe interviews into books. And so I'm wondering how
Hmm.
you're using AI with the processes right now.
Um, I use AI more as a conversation partner. I find it to be chat GPT to be a great way to like reach uh a good understanding of a topic that I might otherwise have to read like several books
Right.
to get. Or if I come up with some kind of a theory that I'm writing and I kind of want to run it by chat GPT to get an idea of like, is this too far-fetched of a comparison to make, etc. And it will do a pretty good job at telling me, to what extent I might be stretching the truth or something like that. So
Ah,
that's typically what I use it for. I also find it really useful for managing a WordPress site. For example, I just added a new feature to my site, and I do some programming, but I'm not likely to figure that stuff out myself. And I'm also not likely to bother hiring a developer to do the thing. So I might just not do the thing at all. So, but just we're talking with Chat GPT, it was able to tell me exactly what code to write and where to put it. And so I was able to do that. And I also use it for spreadsheets. Anything that I want to do in a spreadsheet. And that's again, that's a thing that I've just sort of fumbled my way through, and it will tell me exactly what formula to write. So I find it really useful for that stuff. I haven't used it so much for generating a lot of things. I might use it um, also if I'm working on an idea, like I want to come up with like a name for something, which is something that somebody an author in the self-help genre often does. I've got something I call like the minimum creative dose. Uh, just as one example. But if I'm working on something like that, I might work with ChatGPT to help me come up with some more ideas that use alliteration, or that what are the metaphors that I might want to use, what idioms might I be able to tap into to help uh, design this concept so that it has a little bit more memorability to it, or more emotional weight, or is more relevant to the concept that I'm trying to talk about. So those are primarily the things I use ChatGPT for. I haven't used it to really produce any writing that I'm actually using.
it's not at that stage yet, eh? It's close though, man. I'm looking forward to it. So,
I,
what are some
I
hesitancies that
think
you
it can be
have when it
done.
comes to using it for the writing?
What's that?
What are some hesitancies that you've got when it comes to actually using it for the writing?
Um, my impression of ChatGPT, and I understand that you there's an art to writing the prompts
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
But my impression of ChatGPT in some is that it's like a bad writer's idea of a good writer.
That's a good
Like
point right now. Yeah, eh? People
like
overestimate it right now. I
it
agree. Yeah,
writes the thing, okay, what
interesting
you've
point.
written is
That's
maybe
funny.
true, and that's also maybe sometimes it's not true because it'll hallucinate or something like that. But it's just I just find it really dry. And uh, for the type of writing that I do, I really like explore a topic and try to find what are some of the ironic connections here? How can we connect these unrelated concepts? And I don't find it that great at that sort of stuff. And then also, I've worked really hard over the years to gain a sense of sort of the building and releasing of tension. I like to write nonfiction. I aspire to write nonfiction a little bit like a mystery novelist might, where I'm just giving you just enough information. One, to like teach you about this one concept without confusing you with a bunch of other details, but also to try to build up some kind of a question in your mind of, well, wait, what about this? And I just don't find that it has the sensibility for that, even when I have experimented or tried to like guide it um, with prompts and stuff. So I actually, and I like to write, and I like to write the way that that feels right to me, that like is my voice.
Right.
And I,
Yeah.
in the experimentation that I've done, which hasn't been super extensive, but it's been some, I just haven't found uh I just haven't found it to do the writing that I feel like I want to publish. Additionally, there's just this question of what's the bottleneck in my business? Is it volume? Is it that I just need more books? I need more content. Actually, I probably do. I probably would benefit from using ChatGPT in that way to just help me like crank out more content. But uh, I'm always trying to go back to like, what can I do to be a clearer thinker and a
Hmm.
better writer? And, like you can write 100 books and sell 100 copies of each, and you'd sell 10,000 copies, or you could like write one amazing book and it could sell like 10 million copies. Now, I'm not there yet. I've sold, more than 100,000. Uh, but I like to think that the more that I work on that, trying to not uh, increase the length of the lever, but rather the mass that I'm applying to the lever in terms of
Interesting. Hmm.
uh, quality,
Right.
I like to think that that is going to get me farther. And ChatGPT helps me with that when it comes to having those conversations, really getting to understand a topic. Um, I mean, it replaces podcasts for me. Oh, sorry, I, you're with a podcast, but it replaces podcasts for me in some way. And I used to be a podcaster too. Um, in that if there might be a topic that I've been writing about in the morning and I'm kind of wondering about, and I'll just turn on the voice feature while I'm cooking lunch and just ask ChatGPT a question. And the voice sounds a lot like Scarlett Johansson does in Her. So that's nice too. Um, but
Oh God, you're
I
one
could
of those
just
dudes that when it comes out with an embodied version of it, you're gonna fall in love with the damn thing.
no, the that I will not do.
We'll
Definitely not.
see,
But
man. But
but
what?
I do think that it ChatGPT is a wonderful intellectual partner for like conversations and stuff. So to be able to cook and kind of listen to ChatGPT and what it has to say about this topic, and then say, well, wait, what about this? And then it answers me, and I that's awesome. And that's all just again to like applying, seeing if I can increase the mass that I'm applying to the lever rather than like increasing the length of the lever. The length of the lever, I think, being like, oh, well, look, I could use ChatGPT to write 100 books. I would rather make a book that's 100 times better.
Makes sense. I like it, but I still think you're gonna be one of those dudes that's gonna fall in love with an AI when it comes in your house, man. It's gonna be cleaning the
Definitely not.
dishes. It's gonna be Scarlett Johansson. You're gonna be talking with it, and the next thing you know,
Yeah, if it was Scarlett Johansson, it's negotiable. If it's if Scarlett Johansson becomes an AI, then and in an embodied form, if it's just essentially Scarlett, I'm just saying, like Scarlett, if you're out there, like
it's on the table. Yeah.
I
Oh, that's funny, dude.
if hypothetically she liked me, then I might like her. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, okay, I see. All right. Oh, dude. Let's get into the writing a little bit. I'm curious. You said up front that you write books on hacking as part of it. I'm curious, what's your
Well,
okay, okay. Explain.
the first book is
Expound on
called
that.
Design for Hackers.
Yeah.
And where that came from, I don't know if you're familiar with Hacker News.
No.
The okay, so it's sort of like the Reddit of uh a an incubator in Silicon Valley called Y Combinator. And yeah, from Paul Graham, you might recognize that name. And so it's like sort of like their Reddit where there's like news items and stuff. And so I got the book deal for that book from writing stuff that was popular on Hacker News.
Hmm.
And at that time, this was 2009, 2010, 2011. I was writing the book for hackers. It was like for that audience, people who are entrepreneurial software developers who are building their own things. And at that time, there was really there was this tension between I'm a developer and I want to build this thing. And every designer I work with makes designs that I can't build. I would much rather just be able to have the skill to make something look halfway decent. And so I was making it for those folks. It was a little bit of a vote, but I think at that time there was a little bit more of a tension between, okay, is hacker going to mean entrepreneurial software developer, the original, kind of the original meaning of it? From there's a document that started uh, circulating around MIT about the hacker credo, and it was kind of these things like boredom and drudgery are evil, and nobody should ever have to do the same tasks two times. That sort of thing. I'm just paraphrasing here. Versus what I think kind of won out was sort of the popular culture idea of a hacker as like somebody who breaks into bank software or something,
Right.
or
Yeah,
steals
yeah.
passwords or something. And so it's not for them. It was more for the entrepreneurs and stuff. But it wasn't necessarily about how to be a hacker, but more design principles for them.
It would have been cooler if it was how to steal bank details, man. How to walk up to an
Yeah,
ATM machine and extract
don't
money
know
that you
how to
don't
do
have
it.
to pay back.
That book's gonna have to wait till I learn how to do that.
Maybe AI Scarlett Johansson's gonna give you a hand on that. I love it, man. Dude,
Perhaps.
you said you sold 100,000 books, which is fascinating because the average author sells like one and it's to their mother, right? So it's like, how the hell did you sell 100,000 books? Let's say that you were teaching me how to sell 100,000 books. How would you
Yeah,
go? What would the first step be? Let's kind of walk through the
that's a
process,
really good question.
how I do
I don't
it.
really know how I sold 100,000 books too. When I actually think about that, and I just think about, I'm in this room by myself all day. I'm not. You would think that I would have like my phone ringing off the hook, or there would be like people knocking on my door or something. But no, none of that. Or that I'd get recognized in public, or even that I would be recognized on the internet. And no, none of that happens. But somehow I've sold 100,000 books across several books. But um, if I were to tell somebody how to do it, I would start with saying, like, don't start by just writing the book. I would say make the process of writing the book the process of building an audience. If you don't have
Mm-hmm.
some email lists, some people who have shown an interest in what it is that you have to say that you plan to say again in the book, and say the best stuff in public for free, people will still buy the book. Um, if you don't have somebody ready to buy the book, that's probably not going to go super well, I think. That would be the first thing. I would also encourage people to really study. books. And by that I mean look around on Amazon and think about what are the categories and keywords um, by which somebody would find this book. Like browse around on the browse paths, the categories. Okay, there's business. Okay, there's time management, or there's self-help slash creativity. There's so many different browse. There's like alien romance is a genre of books. And you can look at any of these books and just look at what the sales rank is. So you can maybe look at a category that you want to sell books in, that you want to write a book for, and then go see what's the top ranked book in that category, and then find what its Amazon rank is. And then once you do some comparison there, you can kind of get an idea of what are the more popular genres. Like it tends to be that if you write a book in a genre and it fits into a nice slot, it's going to sell better than not on the base level, on average, which average is a whole other deal in publishing because never try to walk across a river that's on average 4 feet deep because
Yeah, no
you're not
kidding.
going to
There's
make it
only
to the
a
other side of that river.
yeah, it's only an inch across, and then in the middle there's a huge chasm.
And in the middle, it's
Average is
100
four
feet.
feet
Yeah,
deep.
exactly.
Yeah,
But on average,
exactly.
it's 4 feet deep.
Uh-huh.
You have to be careful with that sort of stuff with publishing. But if you want to be assured of like selling some books, it really behooves you to learn about the categories to see what's selling. And there's calculators online too, where you can say, oh, this is the Amazon rank of this Kindle version of this book. You put it in the calculator, and it'll tell you essentially about how many books that book is selling on average per day. So that's a way that you can do some market research. Now, obviously, you don't want your write your book exactly on the exact same topic as some other book. You can do that if it's a huge market and you have the expertise. It really helps to have some kind of unique point of view there. And that's where you start studying the titles and asking yourself, like, what is it about the books that succeed and the books that don't? One of the really basic ways, I think, to come up with a good title for something like a business book or a self-help book is to um, use what I call a turnkey title. And if you think about it, you've seen books like this before. Like, I'll ask, have you ever, Kyle, have you ever heard a book title and not read the book, but that book title helped you?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
What comes to mind?
Well, there are all kinds of situations where it will unlock. I mean, like, for example, even Think and Grow Rich. I've read the book, obviously, a lot of times, but the title itself contains value because it kind of encapsulates the message of the book, so that you can learn from that title. Um,
Mm.
there's a lot of them. What comes to mind is there's a certain dichotomy of surprise to it, where just the title itself brings in some awareness to a problem that you didn't know existed, and that awareness is
Oh,
a
cool.
right. You see what I mean?
What's some books that have done that for you? Some titles that have done that for you? Not even the book. It's even better if you haven't read the book.
I don't freaking know, man. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I remember having the experience multiple times where the title itself has educated me in terms of shifting my awareness to a new
Yeah.
topic or a new way, a new paradigm, if you will. And
For
so,
me, what comes to mind is like the Checklist Manifesto. Never read that book, but that makes me think like checklists. Oh, I use since reading that title, I use checklists all over in my business. Like if I'm getting ready for like a podcast interview, I've got my checklist. Okay, here's how I deal with the camera, the lighting, or whatever. You set up all this stuff. Or deep work, like deep work. Like okay, I mean I've read deep work, but that really turned into like a meme where people were talking about like where they do deep work on their calendar, where do they put it in their schedule. The one thing, I I've not read that book, but as I understand, it's like, okay, take your business and just be like, there's one thing. I've got one objective. My friend Noah Kagan said that when he worked at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg was always just like, does this help us grow? Okay, forget it. Does this help us grow? Does this help us grow? Um, just simplify, make it one thing. And so I think it's the obstacle is the way. I've read the book,
So
but it's
there you
also
go.
like you get the
Right.
idea,
That's what I'm talking
right?
about. Exactly. Yeah.
Stillness is the key. Um, the subtle art of not giving a fuck. It took me a
Yeah.
while to get that one, but I think it obviously it resonated for a lot of people. Is that okay? If you want, it's about priorities. It's about the subtle art of deciding what to give a fuck about and what you don't want to give a fuck about. So coming up with a title that does that, I think is really
Hmm.
uh really has means makes a big difference. Like there's been books that I've read that have been I don't want to name the titles because I don't want to embarrass anybody. It was like this is a really good book, but I just accidentally even came across this book, and based on that title, I wouldn't have read it. So I think that that's important too, is the title.
Give me an
If you
example
want to
with
be
one of
sort
your
of middle
books.
ground, yeah,
Give me an example with one of your books, a title that
sure,
yeah, that really educates or changes the paradigm just by the title itself.
yeah, yeah. I'll get to that with all of them actually. I'll say that also. There's there's kind of two different ways to go, I think, in the business self-help uh, realm. Is that you can either or and maybe both say, I'm going to do an idea play. I'm going to offer an idea to the world and just hope that it sticks. Like saying deep work. Um, like I'm going to make this concept. Nobody's searching for deep work
Right. Yeah.
until deep work comes out. And then there is, I'm going to title this book based upon a keyword that I know that people search about.
Yes.
So I've got a book called How to Write a Book. And it's done pretty well. It's sold a lot of copies because people search for books on how to write a book. And there's How to Write a Book written by an author. And so that book does okay. But, and then I've got Digital Zettelkasten. I don't know if you know even are familiar with what a Zettelkasten is. A lot of people would hear that title and think, what is that? Like that, nobody's going to buy that. Well, it turns out there's this really passionate group of people who are into this note-taking system called Zettelkasten. And there's already a market for it. In fact, I had read one of the books in that market, which is called How to Take Smart Notes. And it still left me with some questions, some things that I didn't feel that it addressed. And so I wrote a book called Digital Zettelkasten. And that's been one of my biggest hits.
Hmm.
And there's a keyword element to it. You know, some people buy it because they know that I wrote it and they like the stuff that I write, but most people are buying it because they're into that subject. And then there's like the Heart to Start, which is more of a concept play, and it's done well. People like it. People love it. The reviews are fantastic. I mean, people tell me, "Oh, this book changed my life," and it has like 1,500 reviews on Amazon or something. And it's really kind of just mildly profitable. I've sold 30,000 copies of it. That's a
Hmm.
lot.
Wow.
But profitability is sort of mild with that one. Now, mind management, not time management, is my most successful, most profitable book. It is, I'm giving you a concept that of this mind management instead of time management.
Yes. Yes. That's
Uh,
the title we're talking about.
I'm
Exactly.
speaking against a category that already exists and telling you that here's why I think that this idea of time management is kind of outdated and in need of a change. And I have a good argument that I spent years thinking about why that is. But there's already a time management genre. There's already a time management category, and there's already books selling in that category. You could probably write a time management book that was like just gobbledygook, and you'd probably sell a couple copies. Like you get a 1-star review pretty quickly or whatever, but you would sell something. You'd sell more than most authors. just because it was a time management book. And that one sold 40,000 copies. But it's way easier to sell. When I spend on ad spend for that book, I it's way easier to make a profit. Um, then there's other really strange ones, like 100 word writing habit is one of my short reads. And it's only out in paperback, so I don't it's hard to compare it apples to apples with my other books, which also have a Kindle version. But I had trouble selling it at first. Like it didn't do terrible, but I made projections and it didn't reach those projections. But when I advertise it on Meta, on Facebook, for example, on my Facebook store, um, it's way easier to at least approach making a profit with that book than say mind management, not time management. Because it's one of these kind of impulse buy things. Like you're in the
Mm,
timeline, you see, oh, 100 word writing habit. Again, it's a title that like you
yes.
don't need to read the book really to kind of say, oh, I get it. I'm going to start a 100 word writing habit. But people want the souvenir. They want a little bit more explanation. And it's a little bit of in the Facebook feed, it's a little bit of an impulse buy. Whereas my management, not time management, maybe not quite so much. It's more like I'm looking for a book in this category, and so I'll go buy it. So those are that's a little bit of the tour of the titles. And then I would say that I'll give you a chance to respond here, but I'll say that also, I've spent a lot of money on ads for these books as well, profitably. Uh, and I think that that's something that a lot of self-published authors have bemoaned the fact that, uh, boy, to sell books, it feels like you kind of have to run ads. But I was talking to Seth Godin about that on my podcast, and he said, well, publishing's always been expensive. It's just people didn't know that. So uh,
Yeah.
if you've got a publisher, yeah, they're taking a huge percentage of the royalties, but they also are doing things to push that book, and just the fact that their name is on it gets people to buy it, etc. They've got some pull. They do sell books. They're not worthless. So my margins, my gross margins on my books are way more than if I traditionally published. But then when it's kind of all said and done, it it approaches being around the same as if they were traditionally published.
Yeah, but you don't have a boss. You don't have somebody to look to. You can have
Exactly.
control, which is, I feel, important for you because you've mentioned that word a couple of times. But what's
Yeah.
interesting, dude, is how the hell do you come up with a title like that? For yours, for example, what's your process for actually identifying a title that you think is going to stick? You look at keywords, you look at what is already on the mind of the target audience you're trying to engage with, and then you adapt based on their psyche.
Well, there's a lot of that, definitely. There's doing the research and like trying to find out the positioning of this book. Um, there is the title, the subtitle, like spending a lot of time on that and like and trying to see if it will pass like what I call the cocktail party test. Is that what does it feel like to recommend this book to somebody?
Yes.
And
Interesting. Yeah,
like that's
very
really
interesting.
important. Books are a
Mm.
very there's no better way to up your Twitter engagement that's in a respectable way than to just go on Twitter and say, "Hey, I want some book recommendations."
Yeah.
Why is that?
People love giving advice. Think about how it makes you feel good when you recommend a movie to a friend. You watch something on Netflix, you're compulsed to tell people about it if you enjoyed it because you want to be the hero and make yourself look good by recommending something that makes them feel good.
But I
But
think there's also a reason why specifically books too.
why do you think it is?
I think it is because it makes you feel smart
Ha!
because you read a book.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Depends on the circle you're in, right?
Of course. Yeah.
If it's a cocktail party rather than a kegger, chances are there's some readers there. And you read this book. Hopefully it affected you in some way. You want to tell somebody about it. But then there's also the element of like, well, how does it feel? What does this book say about me?
Right.
So if I tell you, man, you gotta check out this book I just read. It's called Deep Work. How do you feel?
Wow, this guy's intelligent. He's serious about what he's doing. I gotta get.
Yeah,
I
how do you
gotta.
feel the other person's perceiving you when you say it?
Yeah, well, you're right. You get status just by saying it. But then you look at books like 50 Shades of Grey. It's like imagine a mom going to another mom at a soccer game and being like, I just read this book. You should read it. It's called 50 Shades of Grey. And so there's the other side of it too, where you feel kind of spicy recommending it, or maybe there's a hidden, you don't want to recommend it because when you recommend a book, it's revealing what
Yeah.
you prioritize, your inner hierarchies. And so there is a real revealing element to it, and you're tapping into the positive side of it where people feel good recommending it to folks. And a book is a great referral tool. So it's interesting you look at it from that realm. You look at it from the
Yeah.
marketing
Well,
mindset.
in erotica, it's a little different. I don't know that market. I'm not an erotica reader yet, but 50 Shades of Grey was Twilight fan fiction. It started on like a Twilight fan board, like forum,
Hmm.
and then like she changed the characters' names and made it into 50 Shades of Grey. And I've also heard this theory that, well, part of why 50 Shades of Grey exploded so much was the rise of e-readers, that you could read it on the subway and nobody knew that you were
Yeah.
reading smut, right? And then, I don't know what conversations these readers are having with each other, what message boards they they gather on. But if you're somebody who is into reading, who wants to write erotica, well, hopefully you're a fan yourself and you kind of already know where they're gathering. Like I talked about how Hacker News was the place
Yeah.
that I got popular on and got the book deal for Design for Hackers. And other people hear that book title and they're like, what? Or Digital Zelicast. And go on the Reddit subreddit, the Zelicast and subreddit, you'll see there's a lot of people who are into that thing. So whatever it is, I think that you do want to have some idea, like start with some community of people who are into something and find some way to appeal to them. But I think, again, going back to the self-help business cocktail party test book, like, you know, if if somebody was like, oh, I was just reading this book, it's actually really helped me out a lot. It's really interesting. I mean, it's called the Small Penis Owner's Handbook. Um,
It's helped me a lot. I resonated with it so much. That's hilarious.
the book's not going
Yeah,
to get
right.
recommended that much. That
Well,
one's
that
going
was
to be
my
more
thinking with the 50 Shades of
search.
Grey. Unless you give it as a joke to your buddy, you make fun of for having a small pecker, then it's like, yeah, then it kind of goes in with it. So it depends on
Well,
the
yeah, with
goal.
50 Shades of Grey, I mean, like, again, I don't know what the soccer moms what conversations
Goes.
they're
Yeah,
having, or these
right.
people, or people who are into erotica, who are on message boards with their pseudonyms or whatever, and they're talking
Right.
about whatever. Like you got to check this stuff out. Uh, it's so hot. Uh, so it's gonna the cocktail party test. I don't think applies to erotica. I'm thinking more like self-help business sort of stuff. Like you're not gonna um there's just very subtle psychology to like what it feels like to recommend a book and then also to buy the book too. And sometimes there's like
Yeah.
this sort of moral licensing effect to that too, which is sort of a double-edged sword in that, like I was saying, there's these turnkey titles where you read the book, you're like, oh, I don't even need to read the book. I read the title. It's great. But that's going to help. That helps the title spread. And then there's a bunch of people who are like, well, oh, I've heard of that book. That awareness is there at least. They go ahead and still buy the book. And then the book doesn't always get read. So like I remember once I bought a book called Thanks for the Feedback. And guess what? I never read it. Why do you think I bought that book? Because I wanted to think of myself as somebody who wanted to get feedback.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and I want to let you know that I've got a free book that you can get if you want to tap into more of these resources. And you can get that for free at kylesbook.com. back to the podcast.
But
Interesting. That taps into that's
let's face
exactly
it,
it.
like getting feedback is
Mm,
uncomfortable.
mm. There's a
And
book
so
called
there's that
there's a book called The 10X Rule. Or that's Grant Cardone's book, I guess. Well, the book that I'm
mm,
thinking of is 10X, not 2X. And it's by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And that's
oh
one of
sure.
those titles. Yeah, exactly. That's one of those titles that really gets the message across in the title itself. It's dangerous though because there's that inclination not to read the book because you have think, and even if you don't really, but you have the idea, the perception that oh, I don't need to read it because I know what it is about and it's obvious to me. But the actual content within the book is very different than what you would presume it would be about. And so there's almost a disservice to that kind of a title if you think about it. Yes, it's good to give that good feeling when you refer it, but also you're not encouraging the actual reading of it instead of having
Yeah.
a hook where they have no choice but to actually open that bad boy up and see what the answer is to what hooked them to begin with.
Oh, so you're talking about maybe a title that has some kind of a hook to it, right?
Yeah,
Is that what you
yeah.
mean?
The secret, it's like, what's the secret?
What gets you to open the book? See, there's recommending the book, there's feeling like you want to buy the book, and then there's also can you get them to open the book too,
Yes,
right? And
yes, yes.
there's certainly an argument to be made for, well, they heard the title, they heard the turnkey title, and that the title spread more. And while a lot of people still didn't buy the book, there was more awareness, is more people still bought the book. And then there's the argument, well, a lot of people bought the book, but nobody read it because they just bought the book because they wanted to feel good about buying it, but they didn't actually want to read the content. They just wanted to tell other people that they had bought this book because it was going to say something good about them. And then there's this other layer of, is there a mystery in this title? There's a question this title poses that now I want to answer too. So I think if you can get all three of those
Hmm.
elements, then you have
Interesting.
a winner. But any one of them, you can certainly come up with examples of books that have done really well.
When I think
So,
of a book as a marketing tool, I think of it in large part, yes, as a lead magnet, as an open the door kind of this is what I stand for, this is what I'm about, this is how I can help you, and opening the conversation up. Another one is a
mhm,
referral piece, like you're talking about, and you're really tapping into that. One of the things you can do is with a client who you want to get referrals from, you can use the book and say, I'll give you a few copies of my book. Who are some people that we can send it to from you? So it taps into that effect of making them
mhm.
feel prestigious and have a higher status and be helpful, that hero that I was talking about, because they feel good about giving it away to people. And so you can really spread your audience like that and get into the higher echelons of readership by tapping into that referral effect. It's interesting. You're tapping into some deep psychology there. I like the way you think about just the title alone, and that's a major part. People judge a book by its cover, and it's true. And
Oh, they
so
do.
you're tapping into that. Yeah, right. And you've
They
tapped
do.
into
And
that
the
financially
title.
successfully, which is rare for an author, man. Nobody fucking makes money with books. It's so rare. And so, like, that's where the next question becomes is like, yes, let's say we've got a title that hopefully accomplishes at least one of those three things, ideally all three if possible, which would be stellar, but difficult, but possible, especially with ChatGPT as a guide to type, these are the criterion that I want to follow. Yeah, give me some titles, and you can kind of play with it like that. What about the selling of the book? You say you use ads. How do you make money from it, man? Like it's hard to make money off a $10, $20 book and be profitable
Yeah.
front end.
And you touched on something about like sharing books with clients and stuff. And that's what most business books and self-help books are for, right? They're this sort of lead magnet, or it's like, here's my idea,
Yes.
and some
Mhm.
percentage of people come to you for some higher ticket item. I don't have the higher ticket item. I like writing the books. I like selling the books. I like to make a living from books. And I've got to say, like, I live in Colombia for one, so my cost of living is much cheaper, and it's very intentional that I'm here because I kind of knew what I was signing up for. But I do make a profit selling books. Um, these days it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat what the AIs come up with on any of this stuff. I think like Amazon ads, Meta ads. I mean, Meta ads has gotten to where you're not even putting in gender and age or even interests, and you're just letting Facebook and their magical algorithms do the work. And it's similar with Amazon ads. You can try to mine all sorts of keywords all you want, and there's some tools out there to help you do that. But I mean, just do an auto campaign and monitor it a bit, and you've got a pretty good that will work out about as well as you could do if you don't want to go down a rabbit hole for many, many hours. There was one thing that I did do that I don't any longer do because the tool I was using to do it kind of disappeared. I was using a tool called Prestazon, which I think got bought by Helium 10. And Helium 10 just is a way more expensive, a way more sophisticated product, and it's just more than I want to deal with learning. But the idea is that you run an auto campaign, and that is your research. Is that is that your research? No, it's just your auto campaign, I guess. So it's the three campaign system. You run the automatic campaign, and that way Amazon is just trying to guess when should we show this book when people are searching for certain keywords, and will people buy it? Every time somebody buys a book, you take the keyword that they bought through
Mm,
and you put that in what's called a research campaign.
interesting. Yeah.
And that research campaign, that's a broad keyword. And then you make a negative exact keyword
Uh,
for it.
mm,
And then the exact keyword goes in the performance campaign.
right.
So you're bidding specifically on exactly that keyword, but then you're also hitting the
I see.
broad of that
Yeah.
keyword. So you're kind of getting a little bit of data around that. And so every time there's a sale on one of those broad keywords, you get the exact keyword, you put that in the performance campaign. And this
Mm.
can just work like a flywheel.
You stack them up.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but then I mean, it's very tedious to do manually. I'd rather just do the auto campaign and work on my next book. But that's a way to do it.
It's fascinating. I mean, it makes sense logically speaking for sure. But you said you don't do it anymore because the software is a pain in the ass, eh? All right, I get it. But still, the question remains, how the hell you make a book profitable even with the ad strategies, dude? I mean, people have all kinds of fancy funnels that they'll take people through with upsells, downsells, side sells, up the
Yeah.
wazoo, man. They got all kinds of shit that you can sell in the back end. You don't have that. And you're still running profitable ads selling a book. You don't have a high ticket product you're leading people to. No turning the book into a course and selling the course, no selling affiliate products on the back end that kind of would fit with the
Yeah.
person who's buying the book. None of that. And you're still making money. Are you collecting the emails of all the people that are buying from
Oh
you?
yeah.
And
Well, when you sell a book on Amazon,
it's
you don't get
difficult,
that
right?
information
Well,
unless you're selling through FBA, which I haven't set up. I just recently opened up my Shopify store and have been fulfilling books through print on demand through a tool called Book Vault. That's in the UK. Um, that I got impatient with that because it takes 3 weeks for somebody to receive a book in the US. And that's fine for my loyal readers who are willing to wait. But when I'm running to cold traffic on, say, Meta, it drives me nuts. So I'm starting to deal with a warehouse in the US now where I've just sending some books there and sending them out of there. And then I get the emails if they give me permission. So certainly experiment with trying, how to get that permission. Um, Also running lead ads on Facebook and trying to get the lead first. I have a weekly newsletter called Love Mondays, and that is where I talk about creativity, just like one idea about creativity and making it as a creator, along with a book recommendation in either a quote or a cool tool for thought, such as a piece of software or something like that, and maybe some PS stuff in the PS. So it's a quick like weekly newsletter. People know they're going to hear from me. I'm not selling anything in it. and I'm trying to provide like the best insights I possibly can that are coming directly from my writing process. And like, if
Hmm.
there is any secret sauce, I think that that's it. It's just that I have uncompromisingly uh, sacrificed everything else in my entire life to write these books.
Hmm.
And I spend years on them and I iterate on it on my own. And I share ideas on social media and in my newsletter and try to get an idea of what's resonating with people, what's not, what are their objections, how can I best reach them while building that audience so that there is a an email list. But like I say, I moved to Colombia. I moved away from Silicon Valley to follow my own ideas. I moved away from the United States. I moved to South America to have the runway to follow my own ideas. I do not have children. Like, I live on a budget. I put every fiber of my being into um, trying to get as good at
Hmm.
the writing
Hmm.
as I can. Um, and I'm not somebody who wanted to be a writer growing up. I hated English class.
Interesting.
I dropped
Hmm.
out of English class in college. Um, and so I just accidentally kind of became a writer. So I didn't, it's not like I was in my room when I was 12 years old, like writing short stories or something like that. Like, this
Hmm.
is something I kind of took on as an adult and intentionally chose as a career, as something that I was going to dedicate myself to and just try to do as well as I possibly could.
Why
And,
not sell anything on the back end of it to make more money? You could argue that if you turn your book into a course, sold it for 2 grand with a webinar on the back end, you could, a
yeah,
lot of people do that and people make a lot of money like that. Why not? What's your argument against it?
I've done a little bit of that. I did that after Design for Hackers. Not a $2,000 course, but it was like maybe a $300 course or a $150 course or a $49 course. And, you know, uh, that was a good source of my income for a while. Um, I didn't love it. I don't take
Hmm.
courses myself, so it's hard for me to get inspired about the idea of building a course a lot of the time. Um, and I feel like it really helps to be a fan of whatever it is that you're making. And I'm not ruling it out. It's something that I certainly think about. Uh, Digital Zettelkasten being the primary one, I think that would be the best value for somebody to take a course that might be worth whatever money is involved. But I think look at it as like, why make this course when I can write my next book? Um,
For the
because
money, baby. That's
for the
why.
money, baby, but also there's like I say, I'm trying to increase not the length of the lever, but the mass on the
I get it.
lever. Is
I get
that
it.
the more books I write, each book is a little bit better than the previous. And I think that there's power laws to this. I mean, there's certainly a lot of luck. And I think that that's one thing I wanted to talk about when it came to this idea of, are you presenting an idea to the world, or are you putting something into a juicy category that you're going to have at least middling success with? Is I think that there's kind of this strange paradox there where, yeah, if you do the thing where there's a keyword that that people are searching for, you're going to sell some books, but the chances that you're going to do a subtle art of not giving a fuck and it's going to sell, was it 20, 30 million copies or
Crazy.
something like that?
Yeah.
The chances of that I feel like are a lot lower, but the chances of writing a subtle art of not giving a fuck and having it sell 200 copies, that's probably the more likely outcome. I mean, not when you have HarperCollins as a publisher, maybe, but um, like there's this. uh, I'm a big fan of Nassim Taleb's work. Are you familiar with?
No.
So he made his fortune like in the 87 stock crash. He was an options trader. And as I understand it, he basically would lose money for years on options that would only strike if the market crashed. Apparently, these are not properly priced. Maybe they're better priced now than they used to be, but people don't account for like outsized events. They want to put their money in the S&P 500 ETF, which is, it's fine for some people, etc. But he advocates for this idea of the barbell strategy, which I guess is a well-known term in trading. I don't know. I'm not a finance person, but the idea being that you've got 85% of your assets in something that like won't lose money. That's like tips or government bonds or I've heard some guy had like a room full of nickels because even if there was inflation or hyperinflation, the nickel and the nickels would still be worth at least a nickel, if not more, right? So they're
Yeah.
not going to lose money. Not going to make a ton, but you're not going to lose money. And then the other 15%, you're putting it in just like extremely volatile things, like you hear about this Bitcoin thing, and so you put down a little bit, and you see this crazy Elon Musk guy, and you put a little bit in Tesla, and then, you maybe do something with Sam Bankman-Fried, and you lose that. But uh, and what ends up happening is that you you have some of these smaller bets that make such a huge upside. Yeah, you wish you put all your money in it, but there was no way for you to know. And if
Yeah.
you had, you would have been crazy because you would very likely have lost all your money. So I like to think of creativity in that way. I have enough money to live the lifestyle that I like. I would like to have more money, but it's more important to me to be following ideas that I find interesting and exciting, and
Hmm.
where there's this little bit of a sense of I kind of don't really know what the outcome's going to be.
Love that.
And that's where I think that there's the more of these sort of asymmetric opportunities where,
Hmm.
uh, you make a somewhat small investment, you write a book, and maybe it's a huge hit. Maybe one of these is a huge hit. So I've got a modest career as an author, is the way that I see it. Like 100, it's better than most, right?
Hell of a lot
But
better than most. What's the average
I
author
don't
sell less
have,
than 10 books?
yeah,
So you've 100,000 x the average. So it's pretty damn good.
maybe this is the hedonistic treadmill at work, but I'm still every day like, you know, when's the big break coming, sort
Hmm.
of sort
Hmm.
of thing. And the big break isn't going to come from building the course. I'm like, you could certainly make an argument, oh, you could build a staff, and I'm like, I don't want a staff.
Yeah.
I want to write the book. I want the next book to be better and better and better. And then I want to dabble in other things. I'm dabbling in fiction as well. That's an even riskier bet. Uh, and I whatever effort and it takes to build and market a course, I'm familiar with that effort. Um, and when I make that equation in my brain, I always just think, well, I just work on the next book.
Interesting. What you do, dude, this is what you do. You partner with somebody, you've got the email list, you've got the people that have bought books for you, you've got the name. Partner with
Yeah,
somebody. Like this is where I'm thinking, like, I'll take your book and I'll throw it into AI, we'll come up with a course structure, and then we just use Keynote to throw it into a course, and you can have somebody else present it for you. You don't have to do any of it. Write the emails to promote it, just leverage your list
yeah,
and then leverage your content in a way that you don't have to do any of the work. You get to continue your book while also tapping into the profit and also helping more people in a more impactful way because people are more likely to use what they're buying if they buy it for a higher ticket price point. Um,
yeah.
would you be opposed to something like that?
I don't know. I mean, it's all really all just depends whether Scarlett Johansson's gonna give the presentation or not.
It's getting
That's
there, man.
that's that's all that matters.
That's what it comes back to, man. I love it. We'll kick it off with this, brother. Fascinating conversation. Seriously, interesting individual to choose, and it's rare to choose love over profit, which is counter American culture, very
That's why I don't live in
European thing.
America.
That's why you moved to Colombia, no kidding. Um, let's leave it with this. How do you go about making a book profitable? So you wrote it. A lot of people write a book. It's an ego play. There's something that drives them to share their knowledge. What do we do to immediately start making money after we've written the book, entitled the book, and chosen the content, the target audience? Where does your mind go in terms of the first few steps to take?
uh, I mean, I like for those steps to have already been taken. I am not, I'm very much anti-launch. That's one of the things that I like about self-publishing that I didn't like so much about traditional publishing is that traditional publishing, there's this launch mentality where me traditionally publish authors, and when they've finished writing and promoting a book, they never want to do it again. They're
Mm,
so burned out. Because why? Well, because there's 5,000 books sitting in the warehouse that they're paying monthly to store, and they need to move those books because they only have so many PR people on their staff, and this person's only assigned to this book for like this week. Like they need to decide and figure out early, is this book going to be a hit, or and we're going to invest more resources in it, or are we going to just forget about it and write it off as a loss and move on to the next book? And it takes a long time for a book to gain legs. I share on my income reports on my blog the growth of, say, my management, not time management, the 40,000 copies that it sold. And you can see how that curve starts
mm,
slow and goes
mm,
up. And so I see it as I want to already have an audience of people who are already interested in this book, that I already know or that like these concepts, that are helped by it, that I know that I can send an email to, and who will buy it. And then after that, a lot of it's up to them, and what's in the book. Like, are they going to share it? Are they
mm.
going to talk about it?
But what if you
So
don't have
it's
that
a
following?
day-to-day thing.
That's a rare thing to have that following before you write the book, right?
But where do you think it comes from? It doesn't
From
just like appear out of nowhere. You gotta show up every single day and get it. And you gotta earn it every day because they can unsubscribe in a second. So, and that's how you get like good enough to write a book that's like
mm,
that somebody wants to buy and somebody wants to talk about um the cocktail party and stuff. Like, yeah, there's tactics, there's things that people can do to maybe sell a book, but like it's got to be worth selling. That's one thing I've found is, as much as I like The Heart to Start, as much as I think that the content in the book is good, I'm not crazy about the title. It's just harder to sell. It's harder to make a profit off of it. It's not as good of a book as My Management, Not Time Management. It was my second book. The Time Management, Not Time Management is my third book. My fourth book will hopefully be better. And so that's the mentality that I like to have about it, is just every single day, just show up and do the work. And that's where the audience comes from. That's how you get the audience. And so if you don't have the audience, don't write the book. Just keep writing whatever you think it's going to be in the book. Heck, give it away for free. If you can't find people to be interested in it, then
right.
it's just not going to happen.
Mm. Then do you take the content, say blog posts, and turn that into the book somehow? Are you thinking about it from that lens of creating
In a way,
content?
yeah. In a way, yeah. But I think there's two different ways to think about this. Like, there is the top down and I think that this can depend upon personality too. Like there was this friend who I have who is very successful, who I compared myself with for years, who started blogging around the same time I did, like 2004. Um,
Wow.
my first book was like 2010, 2011. So I was writing for that.
Mm,
Well, I wasn't writing all the time, but it was there.
mm,
And I was talking to a friend at a party. I was like, wow, he's just New York Times bestselling author. He's built this big book. He's built this big business. He does the $2,000 course in the back end sort of thing. Can't keep up with this guy. Friend says, you can't. Don't you get it? He is a J and we are P's. What's he talking about? Right. So Myers-Briggs gets a lot of flack for being
I
pseudoscience,
see.
apparently, or whatever. And
Yeah.
as a cohesive system, yeah, it is. But like the individual types, like extroversion, introversion, are supported by research. Also, I think perceiving and judging. There's this idea of like need for closure. How much do you feel an urge to like come up with an answer for something and complete it? And there's the J's who are the judgers and they're great executors. And then there's the P's who are perceivers, folks like me who like we want to keep the door open. We want to keep all the options open. We want to explore all the ideas. We can't decide what action to take. And so for me, when I write a book, that's why I had a podcast for 8 years, was I would share the ideas in the podcast, share them in the articles, write. And then eventually you you make all these points in space
Mm,
and these points in space don't seem to have any relationship to each other. But eventually something starts to appear and you can kind of
interesting.
connect those dots
You can see
and
the
you can see
constellation.
what is the form that that thing is taking. And it's not like um, stitching together pieces of a quilt where all these things match up perfectly. It's just a little bit of like, what about the time that I talked about this idea in that way? All right. And I'm like still rewriting the whole book. I'm still like trying to make the prose flow. I'm still trying to keep the rhythm uh going in a way. And like I'm still reading it out loud when I write it to like see how it
Mm,
feels.
mm.
And I'm still, having conversations with people where like if somebody has me on a podcast, I get to talk about the idea before I've written the book. Just kind of seeing how it feels and like how are they reacting? If I'm at dinner with friends, I'm like talking about
Mm.
this idea and are they bored? Are they like checking what time it is? Or are they kind of on the edges of their seats? And I'm paying attention to all that stuff. And that's all going into there's the book. And yeah, after that, you could then repurpose it all back into blog posts and content marketing and all that stuff. That's probably what I should do. I could hire somebody to do that or whatever, but I don't.
You're funny, man. You know what to do, but you don't want to, and you don't do it because you don't want to. I think that there's something to be said about the happiness quotient. You seem like a happy dude because of that. You're choosing what makes you happy instead of chasing profit. You had a very
Yeah.
European mindset too. I lived in Italy for 2 years, and then I came back to
Oh, cool.
Canada, and I'm not American. I came back to Canada, and it's just
Yeah.
a totally different mindset. Here is work, 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 accomplish, 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 which is great. We need a part of that, but then
Yeah.
also, I noticed that I miss that part of it where it's relaxed, not caring about the result. There's something to it, just doing it for the purpose of it, and I feel like we miss a lot of that in not maybe not the Colombian culture, but in the American culture, anyways. Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, well, the Colombian culture is very laid back. One of the reasons why I live here, and I've lived in Italy before too. I've experienced
Mm,
that. That was uh, a mind expanding
yeah.
experience for me. And it does also kind of go back to the work of Nassim Taleb, and this sort of illusion of control that we have
Yeah.
when we choose to do the things that we know will work. The
Mm,
reason that we know that they'll work is because everybody's already doing it. Somebody already innovated this thing. I mean, that's what a job is, and that's what education generally is okay, sit down and do these particular tasks. You will acquire this knowledge, and then you will be able to do this job at this company, which has discovered that we can pay this person, you know, $2 to do this thing and sell this product for 3. But to develop the product that you sell for 3, there's got to be a lot of uncertainty. There's got to be a lot of exploration. Most of us aren't used to that. And that is, I think, a very like a surrendering to randomness in a way. Taleb talks a
Surrender.
lot about, a lot about how black swans, these explosive events, whether it is, a huge tragedy like 9/11, or it's like a huge success like subtle art, that we have the tendency to look at these things in retrospect and say, oh, it was because this, that. I mean, look, I even tried it on this podcast. It was because of this, and that. And so now let's try this, and that on the next thing and see if it works. And sometimes it does, but a lot of times, like, stuff just happens and you don't actually know why. But you can choose between doing things that you know are going to work and have a pretty good idea that there's going to be this mild outcome, or you can choose to do
Right.
things that are probably going to fail,
Yeah.
but then there's this
There's that
tiny
little
chance of
chance.
this outs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the stuff that I find exciting.
I think we all do as entrepreneurs, man, because the thing about the certainty of getting a job and going to school, and it comes, the reason why it's a certainty is also the reason why it's an uncertainty, because there's a lot of more competition. There are, there's AI that just changed everything. What looks like a certainty can often be the biggest uncertainty. And so it's I like the moonshots myself, but I think you got to be a special breed to be that kind of a risk taker, you know? And if you got it, baby, tap into it, lean into it, and
More
don't deny
risky
what you
to spend
are.
your life doing stuff you don't like.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. That's it's there's really something there. It's You can look at it as taking a risk, but I look at it as being more risky not to do it. Exactly what you just said. There's really something to that. And it's the whole yin and yang paradox of life. And we don't know what's going to happen. So let's have some fun in the process and not be too hung up on what happens or forcing things to happen. And there's something to be said about that. So, brother, dude, I had fun with you, man. It was an interesting conversation. Anything else you want to add before we go here?
No, I don't think so. I think we talked about some really cool stuff. It's been a lot of fun.
My pleasure, man. Yeah, seriously. So, dude, where can we find you on social media? What book do we recommend buying first?
Oh, I think probably the most broad appeal is mind management, not time management. That is my current magnum opus. And I'm pretty active on Twitter, or sorry, X, at Kadavy. That's where I spend most of my social media time. And then I've got a newsletter, Love Mondays. Got close to 10,000 people on that newsletter, getting some insights about entrepreneurship and creativity every week. It's free. And that's where to find me.
How do we get on the newsletter?
Oh, sorry, that would be at kadavy.net.
Oh,
If
okay.
you're on a mobile phone, you could just type in kdv.co. Got the 3-letter domain. So
Oh, look at you go. Nice and short, eh? I like it. I
yeah,
like it, man. I got
make it easy.
epub.ai, which is my email. I like that one.
It's good.
Yeah, I know. I got lucky with it, dude. Anyways, brother, I had fun, man. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll keep in touch. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
My
Been
pleasure,
an
man.
honor.
It's been an honor and a pleasure, dude. All right. I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. And if you want to get a free copy of my book, go to kylesbook.com and you can get a copy there. I'll talk with you soon.